Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and Title Update 2. It's time for our build update for Longsword. We have some fantastic news today. With the addition of both lagiacrus and Seregios, the sets have a role to play in two of the three sets we're going to talk about today. That's because, the Latent Power Set from Arch-Tempered Ray and his Gamma set still remains incredible. And, it's important to note that the fights are longer on average. You got the 8-star Apexes, Gore, and then, of course, Seregios and lagiacrus being pretty long fights themselves. So latent power is better the longer the fight goes on. The thing is, if you're no fan of latent power and the ups and downs of those power spikes it provides, then we've got a second set that's going to be very comfortable, even if slightly less potential with raw. But then here's the real kicker, the third set, which is your max DPS set, the top set overall with over 500 effective raw potential. It's crazy. And all of this is only improved by the fact that Longsword's general options were buffed, lesser used attacks are simply stronger, as we'll discuss. So it's a great update for Longsword, that's for sure. Before we get into all of it, I want to give full credit and thanks to Josh as usual. That's for deciding the sets and doing the math that we're looking at today to come to these conclusions. I might play the weapon and we discuss what's needed and what works, but Josh is the long-term veteran of the series who creates these builds ultimately. So credit to him once again. Let's begin with a quick overview of some important new mechanics in TU2. Longsword was buffed in some interesting ways this update. They improved the Crimson Slash 2 and 3 with their element scaling, and then the raw for part 3 in particular. They made part 3 also combo into Spirit Blade 1 faster to encourage full use of the Crimson Slash combo, but other moves while you're in red gauge were made stronger, like the round slash level up or the spinning Crimson Slash itself as a follow-up. And there was actually a small nerf to element scaling for Crimson Slash 1. Despite that, it does seem that Crimson Slash 1 into Spirit Blade 1 remains the peak DPS thing you can do if you continuously do it through a fight. But at least now, other attacks in red gauge are more rewarding, and if you finish the Crimson combo, it's worth it a bit more now. Let's now discuss some of the important skill topics we're going to cover today, starting with the Adrenaline Rush skill and this Seregios Set bonus in particular. Adrenaline Rush, as before, basically as you perfectly time an evade or iframe, you get this damage bonus for half a minute. As you can see, that raw bonus gets pretty hefty at higher levels. What's nice about it for Longsword is that the Foresight slash counter will activate it reliably and easily, so you don't have to worry about evading. You just intentionally Foresight slash counter occasionally. But then we get to the set bonus of the Seregios Set, Razor's Edge 1 and 2. Basically, it's going to extend the duration of Adrenaline Rush. So instead of 30 seconds, it's now 45, right? But then you have that second level, which works on the second trigger. This provides an extra 5% of the weapon's base raw, which is really nice, and ultimately you get up to 60 seconds of Adrenaline Rush, which means it's very easy to manage just keeping going. So a mix of Adrenaline Rush and the Seregios Set actually is important for the second set we're going to discuss today. But that's not all we want to mention and explain today for sets. We also have the lagiacrus set, and in this specific one we want to talk about the two set piece. The lagiacrus set comes with Leviathan's Fury or Azure Bolt 1 and 2. All we really care about here is the 2 set bonus, which temporarily increases affinity and can deal extra thunder damage upon build-up. To trigger this while you're wearing the 2-piece of the lagiacrus set, you just need to attack a few times, and then it activates. It deals this little burst of thunder, which can actually be modified by Thunder Element. But after that, you get this nice 15% affinity bonus for 20 seconds. Then it goes on cooldown for 30 seconds. The last thing I want to mention for today's video before we get into the builds is this offensive decoration, which you might have actually seen in use a little bit now. Airborne is an offensive decoration that at least requires a 2 offensive slot decoration. As you can see, it improves your jumping attack power by 10%, so your jumping attacks. So this of course works with any aerial attack you might do from a slide or maybe jumping from the back of your seikret, but it actually works for 2 moves in specific, Spinning Crimson Slash and Helm Splitter. Basically, are you technically in the air right now? Then yeah, you get this 10% bonus. Spinning Crimson Slash was slightly improved this patch, and Helm Splitter can be useful if you're trying to avoid attacks and deal your own damage at the same time. Or maybe you're specifically going for a part break, like cutting off a tail. So if you yourself find yourself using Helm Splitter because you really like that rather than the meta Crimson combo Spirit Blade 1 thing, then it's definitely worth considering. Okay, so for the 3 sets we're going to be talking about, you can have the same rule for the longsword you're going to run, and that is ultimately Artian meta with a usual setup. Although there's 2 things I should at least mention. We have a paralysis status setup, and we have an element setup in specific. The one that's better is technically matching the element weakness of the monster. So take this fire one here, this would actually be good against lagiacrus because that's what he's weak to, and you would get more value out of this than say paralysis. or other status. But the problem with that is it means you're going to need a perfectly artian reinforced roll and then 5 different elements that you swap between based on the target. If you do not care for that entire concept, then fair enough, man. If you're not a speedrunner, I don't think it really matters. And there's a lot of benefits to just having something fun like paralysis and getting a free DPS window at some point in the fight, maybe multiple. But I've got to talk about what's possible and what's best. So your ideal setup would be an artian weapon, and it would have the element that the monster is most weak to. For its production and reinforced bonuses, you go all attack and then 1 sharpness boost. So you're not actually committing to the element at all, you're just getting this extra bonus damage, which really stacks up. If you instead were to do the paralysis or status setup, then it would be the same thing. All attack infusion, all attack boost, except for 1 for 1 sharpness boost. That would be the goal. Which you choose to go for, how much you invest in this, it's up to you. For the offensive decorations on these weapons then, it's the same as it usually is. We've got crit boost 3 and then crit boost 2 to amass the cap of crit boost, which is 5. So achieve that however you want. And then we have razor sharp and then 1 bonus level of something. I've gone for handicraft just to help the sharpness even further. But if you have something else that's going to be useful, you could consider it. On the fire weapon, I could give it a little bit of fire attack if I wanted. It depends on what you've got. Ultimately, the razor sharp with 1 handicraft is very rare. I literally have had 1 in my entire time playing Wilds. Okay, so here are the 3 sets we're going to be talking about today, but we'll start with the Latent Power Set from the Arch-Tempered update so we can blast through it pretty quick. So, as before back then, we have the ray gamma pieces of the helmet, the gloves, and the waist. Then you've got the regular arkveld in beta on the chest piece, and then the regular ray in beta legs, providing that final set. For the talisman, we have the counter charm for 3 levels of counter strike, and I strongly recommend corrupted mantle as always, with the crimson 1 spirit blade 1 combo. And these are the decorations that I use to achieve this skill list. For full weakness exploit, 3 latent power, the full counter-strike, max smite, quick sheath, you get a bit of evade extender, 1 adrenaline rush, 1 burst, bit of stamina surge, and then we have the 4-piece of ray set thanks to all the different ray pieces, and with that we have the 3-piece activation of the Guts Tenacity Lord Soul that comes from Arch-Tempered Ray Dao. The Ray Dao set bonus basically means your latent power is going to last significantly longer, which is important, where the Lord Soul or Guts Tenacity simply provides you attack at the cost of your defenses, until you go down once, at which point you lose the attack, but you get boosted defenses. Your goal would to be never to cart right, so it's just straight DPS increase. The crux of this set is latent power, which is giving you this massive amount of affinity and even helping your stamina. The problem is it requires certain conditions. Those could be either enough time next to a large monster, or taking enough damage to activate it. Then you have it activate, then it goes on cooldown, then it can activate again. So the longer a fight goes on, the better latent power is. And in the context of Title Update 2, where we have the 8-star versions of the Apex, Gore, Magala, and then of course our 2 new monsters, these fights are lasting a lot longer than say 3 or 4 minutes. So the longer the hunt goes on, the more uptime you have of latent power, and so the better it becomes. It's still a very strong set, and especially in that context. Some people just don't like this concept of being strong and then weak at different points, because sometimes you get that latent power bonus and you're just not able to deal much DPS, which sucks. But to just highlight it, here's the math. We've got our Artian 225 base raw, and with the Ray 3-piece, we're getting that Guts bonus, which is a 5% raw increase, bringing us to 236. We get a bunch of raw from Counter-Strike 3, Burst and Adrenaline 1, bringing us to 279. This is modified by White Sharpness, bringing us to 367. For our affinity, we've got Maximum Might 3, Full Weakness Exploit, the base of the Artian, and then Latent Power 3 with an assumed 66% uptime. The longer the fight goes on, this could be higher. But to keep it simple, we'll assume 85% affinity. And with full crit boost, that's a 40% damage increase on your crits. But with 85% affinity, that's more like a 34% damage increase. So we multiply that and it brings us to the effective raw of 494, which is obviously insane. But we can do better than that. Let's now talk about the Razor Blade or the Seregios 2-piece set that's going to have a lot of comfort. Ultimately, this will have slightly less effective raw than latent power, but then you don't need to play around the power spikes and maximize that properly, so there's a lot less pressure here. It's more reliable. You can have an extra 15 seconds of adrenaline rush thanks to the Seregios 2-piece, and then you've got more stamina skills for comfort and maximum might uptime. So there's a lot of benefits to this if you're more of a casual player. Here's the set then. Seregios helm in beta, lagiacrus chest in beta, Seregios gloves in beta. Then we have the Gore 2-piece, both in beta for the waist and legs. Once again, we have the counter charm for 3 levels of counter strike and corrupted mantle. Here are the decorations we use to achieve this skill list. Full weakness exploit, 3 adrenaline rush, 3 constitution, full counter strike, max smite, antivirus and quick sheath, and then a couple other skill levels for some bonuses. This gives us 2 piece of gore for the affinity, of course, and we got 2 piece of Razor's Edge to trigger that, giving us increased adrenaline rush time. So here's the math for this more comfy set. Again, we have 225 base raw, we have 25 from Counter-Strike 3, and then 20 from Adrenaline 3, bringing us to 270. Modify that by the white sharpness, bringing us to 356.4. Then we have our 90% affinity from Maximum Might, Weakness Exploit, the base Artian and Antivirus, and we've still got Crit Boost 5, so that averages out to about 36%. So we multiply that by a current number, bringing us to 485 effective raw. 9 less than the latent power and its scaling power spikes. But I said we've got one more set that's going to beat both of these out. The max DPS set for Title Update 2 is going to require you to maintain your adrenaline rush, because the value of that is going to be immense. All you need to do for that is every 30 seconds successfully land a Foresight/counter, or I guess perfect evade if you have to. This is a completely reasonable request for the counter weapon that is longsword. It just means you're not always going for special sheaths as much for every counter, I suppose. Plus, Foresight Slash is actually an easier counter. Anyway, to get this set going then, we have the lagiacrus 2-piece. So for that, we have lagiacrus helm in beta, and then the waist in beta as well. We have the gore 2-piece here, with the gore beta chest and the gore beta legs. Then we just have the Seregios gloves in beta for that last piece. Important to note here is the talisman's changed. We have 3 levels of adrenaline rush on our counter-attack charm. With Title Update 2, you can now upgrade this to Rarity 8, so we make use of it. And again, Corrupted Mantle to maximize the Crimson/1 Spirit Blade 1 combo. With these decorations, we achieve this skill list. Full Adrenaline Rush, Weakness Exploit, Counter-Strike, Max Might, Antivirus, Quick Sheath. It's insane. Then you get a bit of evade window, which is really nice. 1 Constitution, 1 Flinch Free, and then we have a set bonuses. Of course, we have the Gore 2-piece for Frenzied and Antivirus. We get the affinity from the 2-piece of lagiacrus. And all of that also provides scale layering, which just helps your stamina management when you're low health as a neat bonus. So let's do the math for this ridiculous set. 225 base roll. We're getting our raw bonuses from Counter-Strike 3 and then Adrenaline 5, bringing us to 280. We got white sharpness, so that brings us to 369.6. Then we've got 96% reliable affinity, and we're lowballing it here, by the way, thanks to our Maximum Might, Weakness Exploit, the base Artian, Antivirus, and then we have that affinity you get from the lagiacrus 2 set. We're assuming 40% uptime on that, which to be fair, is likely higher than that. So 96% reliable affinity with 5 crit boost, that's insane. It's going to equate more like 38.4% from that, so we multiply that by the number we have, and it brings us to 512 effective raw with this set. This assumes you have constant uptime of adrenaline rush though, guys. So again, every half minute you land a Foresight counter or maybe a perfect evade. And we think this is a very reasonable request for a longsword. The potential's ridiculous. 512 effective raw is incredible. Josh should definitely be proud of this one. It's pretty insane. Overall then, it's been a pretty fantastic update for longsword. The general gameplay buffs are nice if you find a moment to do something other than the Crimson/1 Spirit Blade 1 combo. The new skills are awesome, both armor sets getting involved in some way here in these sets. Yeah, I'm really pleased. Anyway, I hope you get good use out of the builds today. Until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.